Captain Minho Kim stood at the observation deck of Kronos 7 station, watching ships from a dozen different species dock and depart. The station floated in the quiet darkness of space far from any major world. It was built for one purpose, neutral ground. Here, enemies could meet without fear. Here, treaties were signed and wars were prevented. At least that was how it was supposed to work. Minho turned away from the window and walked toward the conference hall. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. Behind him, Ambassador Una Park adjusted her formal jacket and checked her datapad one last time. She looked calm, but Minho knew her well enough to see the tension in her shoulders. "They're already inside," Una said quietly. "The Vex delegation arrived an hour early." Minho nodded. The Vex Imperium had requested this meeting 3 weeks ago. They wanted to discuss borders, trade routes, and mining rights in the disputed sectors. It should have been simple. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for 80 years, but they had learned quickly. They knew how to negotiate. They knew how to compromise. Dr. Ji-Won Choi waited for them outside the conference hall. She was their xenobiologist, an expert on alien cultures and biology. Her job was to make sure they didn't accidentally insult anyone or miss important cultural signals. She smiled when she saw them, but her eyes were worried. "Something feels wrong," Ji-Won whispered. "The Vex are acting strange. They won't make eye contact, and their translator keeps adjusting his position." "Nervous about the negotiations?" Minho asked. "Maybe. Or maybe something else." Ji-Won pulled out her scanner, a small device that could analyze air quality and biological markers. "I'm going to run some checks during the meeting, just to be safe." The conference hall was large and circular with a table made of smooth white stone in the center. The Vex delegation sat on one side. There were 5 of them, all covered in hard dark shells that gleamed under the lights. Their eyes were compound, like insects from Earth, and their mouths clicked when they spoke. High Commander Thexrel sat in the middle, his shell marked with red symbols that showed his rank. Minho, Una, and Ji-Won took their seats across from the Vex. 2 other human crew members joined them, both security officers who stood near the walls. The room smelled clean, almost sterile. Air cycled through vents in the ceiling, keeping the atmosphere comfortable for all species present. "Welcome," Thexrel said through his translator device. His voice came out flat and mechanical. "We thank you for meeting with us." "We're happy to discuss any concerns," Una replied. She placed her hands on the table, open and relaxed. "A sign of good faith. The United Earth government values our relationship with the Vex Imperium." The negotiations began. They talked about mining rights in the Keller system. They discussed shipping lanes and tariff agreements. Everything seemed normal. Thexrel made demands Una countered with reasonable compromises, and slowly they found middle ground. This was how diplomacy worked. This was how peace was maintained, but Ji-Won couldn't shake her unease. She kept glancing at her scanner. 40 minutes into the meeting, the device vibrated softly in her hand. She looked down at the screen and her blood went cold. The air composition was changing. Slowly, carefully, someone was introducing a foreign compound into the ventilation system. The compound was harmless to the Vex with their different biology, but to humans it was poison. Ji-Won's hand shot up. "We need to leave now." Minho saw her face and didn't ask questions. He stood immediately. "Meeting's over." Everyone out, the Vex delegation didn't move. Thexrel remained in his seat, his compound eyes reflecting the light. "Is there a problem, Ambassador?" "The air," Ji-Won said, her voice shaking with anger and fear. "You're poisoning us." One of the human security officers stumbled. Then the other. They both grabbed the walls for support, their faces turning pale. Una started coughing, a harsh, wet sound that echoed in the suddenly quiet room. Thexrel stood. The other Vex followed. "Such an unfortunate accident," he said, but there was no surprise in his mechanical voice. No concern. "The station's systems must be malfunctioning." "You did this," Minho said. He could feel it now, a tightness in his chest, a burning in his lungs. "You deliberately poisoned the ventilation. Perhaps you should have your engineers check more carefully before attending meetings in alien stations." Thexrel turned toward the exit. "We will file a complaint about the station's maintenance. Such dangerous conditions." The Vex delegation walked out. They sealed the door behind them. Through the window, Minho could see them moving quickly toward their ship. They were leaving. They were running. Jiwon pulled emergency breathers from her pack and passed them around. The small devices filtered the air, giving them a few more minutes. But two of their crew were already unconscious on the floor. Yuna was barely standing, her face covered in sweat. "Get to the ship," Minho ordered. He activated his communicator. "This is Captain Kim to the Steadfast Promise. Emergency extraction. We have casualties." They stumbled through the corridors of Chronos 7. The station was empty. The Vex had chosen this location carefully. No witnesses, no other delegations nearby, just humans and their would-be killers. Minho's ship was docked on the lower level. His crew rushed out to meet them, pulling the unconscious officers inside, helping Yuna to the medical bay. Jiwon collapsed as soon as they were through the airlock, her breather finally running out. The ship's doctor worked frantically. 2 crew members were critical. 3 others, including Yuna and Jiwon, were stabilized but weak. They would survive, but it had been close. Too close. Minho sat in the captain's chair and stared at the view screen. The Vex ship was already gone, vanished into faster-than-light travel. They thought they had won. They thought they had eliminated a problem. He opened a communication channel on all frequencies. Every ship within 100 light-years would hear this message. Every station, every world, the message would spread through the galaxy like wildfire. "This is Captain Minho Kim of the United Earth vessel Steadfast Promise," he said, his voice steady despite the poison still burning in his lungs. "At 1300 hours Standard Galactic Time, the Vex Imperium deliberately poisoned human diplomats during peace negotiations at Chronos 7 Station. This was not an accident. This was murder. Galactic law has been broken. We were betrayed." He ended the transmission and leaned back in his chair. Around him, his bridge crew worked in silence. They all knew what came next. They all understood what this meant. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the Vex were celebrating. They thought they were safe. They thought they could break the one law that should never be broken. They were wrong, and soon they would learn why. The message reached Earth in less than 6 hours. It traveled through the quantum communication network, jumping from relay to relay, crossing thousands of light-years in moments. By the time it arrived at United Earth Command, every major species in the galaxy had already heard it, and every single one of them understood what it meant. Admiral Hyun Lee was in a strategy meeting when the alert came through. She was a tall woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had served in Earth's fleet for 35 years. She had fought pirates, negotiated with alien warlords, and kept peace in dozens of systems. But when she read Minho's message, her face went completely blank. "Get me the Galactic Council," she said quietly. "Now." Around the table, her officers moved quickly. They had never heard that tone in her voice before. It was cold, flat, empty of everything except purpose. Specialist Taeyang-o was the first to understand. He was the fleet's intelligence officer, young but brilliant. He had studied every war, every conflict, every treaty in human history. He knew what happened when humans were betrayed. "Admiral," Taeyang said carefully, "the Council is already trying to contact us. 23 species have sent formal inquiries. The Kelthani Arbiter is requesting immediate communication." "Ignore them," Hyun said. "For now. I want a full fleet mobilization order. 2nd Fleet, 3rd Fleet, and 7th Fleet. Have them ready to move within 24 hours. "All 3 fleets?" another officer asked. "That's nearly 2,000 ships." "Yes." Hyun stood and walked to the large display showing the galaxy. She found the Vex territories, a cluster of systems in the outer spiral arm, and send orders to intelligence. "I want the location of every Vex military installation, every ship, every colony, everything." Taeyang understood immediately. This wasn't going to be a diplomatic protest. This wasn't going to be sanctions or stern words. This was war. But not the kind most species knew. This was going to be something different. Something the galaxy had only seen once before. "Admiral, should I pull up the Krellian incursion files?" Taeyang asked. Hyun nodded slowly. "Yes, let's remind ourselves who we are." The files appeared on the display. 60 years ago, a species called the Krellians had emerged from dark space. They were conquerors, destroyers, a civilization that consumed entire worlds. They had swept through the outer galaxy like a plague, and no one could stop them. The Galactic Council had called for evacuation. Abandon the outer worlds, pull back to defendable positions, and hope the Krellians would eventually stop. But humanity was in those outer worlds. Young colonies barely established filled with families and dreamers. And humans had a simple response to the Council's evacuation order. No. For 3 years, Earth's fleets held the line. They fought without reinforcements. They died in numbers that made other species weep. But they never retreated. They gave the galaxy time to organize, time to build defenses, time to survive. And when the Krellian incursion finally ended, it wasn't because the Krellians gave up. It was because humanity had bled them dry. After the war, the Galactic Council held a special session. They wanted to reward humanity, to give them territory, resources, money. But Earth's ambassador at the time, an old man named Director Kim, had refused everything except one thing. "We don't want your payment," he had said. "We want your promise. If humanity helps you survive, you will never betray us. You will never attack us without cause. You will never poison our diplomats or murder our people in the darkness.
Make this a law."
Make it absolute, and we will do the same for you." The Council had agreed immediately. The vote was unanimous. Galactic Law Section 7, Subsection 3. No species shall commit acts of betrayal, assassination, or unprovoked violence against humanity. Violation of this law removes all Council protection from the offending species. The law went both ways. Humans promised not to attack others without cause. In return, the galaxy promised not to betray them. For 60 years, that law had held. For 60 years, there had been peace until now. The door to the strategy room opened. Council Arbiter Quendor appeared on the communication screen. He was a Kelthani, a species with 4 arms and pale blue skin. He was one of the oldest diplomats in the galaxy, respected by everyone. "Admiral Lee," Quendor said, his voice heavy, "I have been authorized by the full council to make an official statement." "I'm listening," Hyun said. "The Vex Imperium has violated Galactic Law Section 7, Subsection 3. This violation has been verified by independent investigators at Kronos 7 Station. The evidence is clear. The Council recognizes humanity's right to respond." Hyun's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean exactly, Arbiter?" "It means the Council will not interfere. The law is clear. The Vex have forfeited all protection." Quendor paused. "But Admiral, I must ask, what are your intentions? Will there be a trial? Sanctions? Or a war?" Hyun finished for him. She looked at the star map, at the Vex territories glowing red on the display. "There will be justice, Arbiter. What form that takes depends entirely on the Vex. Many species are afraid," Quendor admitted. "They remember the Krellian incursion. They remember what humans are capable of when pushed." "Good," Hyun said. "They should remember. We saved them because we chose to. We bled for them because we believed in something better than endless war. And in return we asked for one simple thing. Don't betray us." "The Vex made a terrible mistake," Quendor said softly. "Yes, they did." Hyun terminated the connection. She turned to her officers. They were all watching her, waiting for orders. These were good people, trained and professional. They would follow her anywhere. But she needed them to understand what was about to happen. 60 years ago, humanity earned a reputation, Hyun said. "We became the species that doesn't quit. The species that holds the line when everyone else runs. We could have used that reputation to conquer. We could have demanded tribute. We could have become tyrants." She paused. "We didn't. We chose cooperation. We chose trust. And the Vex threw that in our faces." "What are your orders, Admiral?" Tai Yang asked. "Mobilize the fleets, begin intelligence gathering on all Vex military assets, and send a message to every human ship in space. Tell them what happened. Tell them why." Hyun's voice hardened. "The Vex wanted to eliminate us quietly. They wanted to make us disappear. Instead, they're about to learn why galactic law exists. They're about to learn why you don't betray humans." The officers moved to their stations. Orders flowed out through the network. Across Earth, across Luna, across Mars and the Belt colonies, shipyards came alive. Crews reported for duty. Weapons were loaded. Ships that had been on patrol turned and began the long journey to assembly points. Within 12 hours, 2,000 human warships were moving. They didn't rush. They didn't scatter. They moved with calm, terrifying purpose toward the Vex borders. And throughout the galaxy, other species watched and remembered. They remembered 3 years of desperate fighting. They remembered human ships burning in space rather than retreating. They remembered why Galactic Law Section 7 existed. The Vex had broken that law, and now they would pay the price. Commander Narration checked her equipment one last time. The stealth suit was tight against her skin, black as the void of space, equipped with technology that made her nearly invisible to sensors. Behind her, the 12 members of Wraith Squadron did the same. They were the best of the best, soldiers trained for operations that officially didn't exist. Their ship, the Shadow Dancer, hung in the darkness between stars. No running lights, no emissions, just a cold piece of metal drifting through space like debris. Ahead of them, 3 light minutes away, was a Vex military research station. Target confirmed, Nari said quietly into her communicator. Station has approximately 200 military personnel. No civilians detected. Admiral Hyun's voice came back calm and clear. Rules of engagement are unchanged, Commander. Military targets only. No civilian casualties. Understood. Nari looked at her team. You all heard that. This is a military operation, not a massacre. We disable their weapons research, we collect intelligence, and we leave. Clean and professional, the team nodded. They had done this 4 times already in the past 2 weeks. 4 Vex military installations disabled without a single civilian casualty. That was important. Humanity needed to show the galaxy that they were precise. Controlled. Dangerous, yes, but not monsters. The Shadow Dancer moved closer. When they were within range, Nari and her team boarded small insertion pods. The pods were little more than armored coffins with tiny thrusters. They launched silently, crossing the distance to the station in minutes. Nari's pod attached to the station's hull with a soft magnetic click. She placed a cutting charge on the metal and waited. 5 seconds later, the charge melted through, creating a small opening. She pulled herself inside, her suit's gravity field keeping her oriented in the zero-G environment. The interior of the station was cold and dark. The Vex didn't need as much light as humans. Nari activated her helmet's vision enhancement and moved forward. Behind her, the rest of the team emerged from their entry points. They spread through the station like ghosts. The Vex were not ready. Why would they be? Their territory was supposed to be safe. Their high commander had assured them that the human threat was being handled, that the assassination at Kronos 7 would solve everything, that soon humanity would be too weak to respond. They were wrong about all of it. Nari reached the research wing and planted data extractors on the main computers. The devices worked quickly, copying everything. Weapons designs, communication codes, fleet positions. Everything humanity needed to dismantle the Vex military piece by piece. A Vex soldier rounded the corner. He saw Nari and reached for his weapon. She moved faster, her training taking over. She disarmed him, put him in a hold, and injected him with a fast-acting sedative. He went limp in her arms. She lowered him gently to the floor. Contact in Section 7, she reported. Neutralized non-lethally. Same in Section 3, another team member replied. They're starting to realize we're here. Good, Nari said. Let them sound the alarm. We're almost done anyway. The station's alarms began to wail. Emergency lights flashed red. Vex soldiers poured into the corridors, their weapons ready. But Wraith Squadron was already moving to extraction points. They had what they came for. Nari was the last to leave. She placed one final device on the station's reactor core. Not a bomb. Something else. Something that would shut down the reactor safely but completely. The station would lose all power, would become a floating piece of junk, but no one would die. She made it back to her pod and launched. Behind her, the station went dark. 200 Vex soldiers were trapped inside, their weapons research destroyed, their communications down. They would be rescued eventually. But the message was clear. Humanity could reach them anywhere. 3 light-years away aboard the flagship Indomitable, engineer Do-Yun Kang was working on a different kind of message. He stood in the weapons lab surrounded by holographic displays showing Vex biology and armor composition. The problem with the Vex, Do-Hyun explained to the observation team, is their bioarmor. It's incredibly strong, resistant to most standard weapons, but every strength has a weakness. He activated the display. It showed a Vex soldier's shell at the molecular level. Their armor is made of a silicon-calcium composite. Very hard, very durable, but it has a specific resonance frequency. Hit it with the right sonic pulse and the whole thing shatters like glass. Admiral Hyun, watching from the observation deck, leaned forward. You've built a weapon that specifically targets Vex armor? Yes, Admiral. We call it the harmonic disruptor. It's non-lethal to the Vex themselves, just destroys their armor and weapons, leaves them vulnerable but alive. Do-hyun smiled slightly. We can strip an entire Vex battalion of their protection without killing anyone. How long until it's ready for deployment? It's already in production. We'll have enough units for the fleet within a week. Hyun nodded, satisfied. This was the human way. Adapt, overcome, use intelligence instead of brute force. The Vex had better weapons? Fine. Humanity would build something better, faster, more precise. While Wraith squadrons struck military targets and engineers developed new weapons, Specialist Taiyang worked from his station on Earth. His job was information, intelligence, knowing everything about the enemy before they knew anything themselves. He had compiled a complete database of Vex military assets. Every ship, every station, every weapons cache. He knew their patrol routes, their communication frequencies, their supply chains. He knew things about the Vex military that even their own commanders didn't know. The Vex have 17 major military installations, Taeyang reported during the daily briefing. We've now disabled 5. Their communication network is fragmenting. They can't coordinate effectively. What about their fleet? Hyun asked, scattered. They're pulling ships back to defend their core worlds, which leaves their borders exposed. They're making decisions based on fear, not strategy. Taeyang pulled up a new display. And there's something else. High Commander Thexril is losing support. Several colony governors are questioning his leadership. Good, Hyun said. Fear and doubt. That's what we want. Keep the pressure on. The campaign continued. Every day another Vex military target was hit. Communications relays were destroyed. Supply depots were emptied. Patrol ships were intercepted and disabled, their crews placed in stasis pods and left floating in space for their own people to recover. The Vex tried to fight back. They sent battle fleets to engage the human ships. But human tactics were different. They didn't line up for honorable combat. They used guerrilla warfare, hit-and-run attacks, asymmetric engagement. Every time the Vex concentrated their forces, humanity struck somewhere else. And through it all, not a single civilian was harmed. Every attack was surgical, precise, professional. The galaxy watched in awe. Other species began to understand. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice. Humanity was dismantling the Vex military capability, yes, but they were doing it without becoming the monsters the Vex had tried to paint them as. High Commander Thexril sat in his command chamber on the Vex homeworld, watching reports flood in. Another station lost, another fleet scattered, another colony demanding his resignation. He had thought humans were weak, soft, emotional creatures who could be eliminated quietly. He had been so terribly wrong. Contact Earth, Thexril ordered his communication officer. Tell them we want to negotiate. Tell them we're willing to discuss terms. The officer hesitated. Sir, they haven't responded to any of our previous attempts at contact. Try again. Keep trying. Make them understand that we want peace. But the officer was right. Every message went unanswered. Humanity wasn't interested in talking, not yet. First, they would finish what they started. First, they would ensure the Vex could never threaten anyone again. And only then, when justice had been served, would they listen to pleas for mercy. 3 months had passed since the betrayal at Kronos 7. The Vex Imperium, once a proud military power, was now a shadow of itself. Their fleets were scattered. Their military installations lay dark and powerless. Their colonies were in open rebellion against High Commander Thexril's leadership. Envoy Somin Han stepped off her shuttle onto the Vex homeworld. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. She had been chosen for this task because she was good at listening, good at finding solutions, and completely unafraid of dangerous situations. Behind her walked a security detail of 4 soldiers, their weapons visible but not raised. Civilian leader Praxil waited at the landing pad. He was old for a Vex, his shell marked with the scars of a long life. Unlike the military commanders, Praxil was a governor, someone who cared about his people rather than pride or power. Envoy Han, Praxil said through his translator. His voice was tired. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I'm here to listen, Somin replied. But you should know that my government is not interested in empty words. If you want this war to end, you need to offer something real. We understand. Please come with me. They walked through the Vex capital. It was a strange city to human eyes. All dark towers and sharp angles built for a species that saw the world differently. But Somin noticed something else, the fear. Vex civilians watched from windows and doorways. They saw the human envoy and whispered to each other. They knew what her presence meant. Praxil led her to a government building where other colony governors were waiting. 15 Vex leaders representing worlds across the Imperium. None of them were military. All of them looked exhausted. High Commander Thexril is under arrest, Praxil announced without preamble. We removed him from power 2 days ago. He and his co-conspirators are in custody, awaiting whatever judgment your people demand. Somin sat down across from them. She pulled out a data pad and displayed the human terms. These are non-negotiable. First, Thexril and everyone involved in the Chronos 7 attack will stand trial. Second, the Vex military will be reduced by 80%. Third, human observers will oversee your government for 50 years to ensure compliance. Fourth, you will pay reparations to the families of those who were injured in the attack. The room was silent. Finally, one of the governors spoke. 50 years is a long time. It is, Somin agreed. But consider the alternative. My government could have destroyed every military installation in your space. They could have blockaded your worlds until your economies collapsed. They could have done all of this and been completely justified under galactic law. She leaned forward. Instead, we're offering you a path forward, a way to rebuild trust. And if we refuse, another governor asked, then the war continues. And eventually, you lose everything. Your choice. Praxil looked at his fellow governors. They had already discussed this, already knew what they had to do. We accept your terms. All of them. We will cooperate fully. 2 weeks later, Chronos 7 Station hosted a trial unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Galactic Council sent representatives from 40 different species to observe. News networks from across known space broadcast every moment. This wasn't just about punishing the Vex. This was about showing everyone what happened when you broke galactic law. High Commander Thexril stood in the center of the courtroom, his shell stripped of all rank insignia. Beside him were 12 other Vex officers, all of whom had been involved in planning or executing the attack. They stood silent, their compound eyes reflecting nothing. Ambassador Una Park entered the courtroom. She had recovered from the poisoning, though she still tired easily. She took her place at the witness stand and the room fell completely silent. Ambassador Park, the Kelthani judge began, please tell us what happened at Chronos 7 Station 3 months ago. Una described everything. The meeting, the negotiations, the moment when Dr. Jiwan had noticed the poisoning. She spoke calmly, without anger, simply stating facts. But everyone in the room could feel the weight of those facts. When she finished, Thexril was allowed to speak in his own defense. Humanity is too powerful, Thexril said through his translator. They are too dangerous. Every year they grow stronger. Every year they expand further into space. We acted to protect ourselves and the galaxy from future domination. The judge looked at him for a long moment. You feared what humanity might do in the future, so you chose to murder their diplomats in the present? Yes, it was necessary. Una stood up. May I respond to that? The judge nodded. Please do. Humanity has been part of the Galactic Council for 80 years, Una said, looking directly at Thexril. In that time, we have fought one major war, the Krellian incursion, and we fought it to save others, not to conquer them. We could have used our military power to take territory. We could have demanded tribute from the species we saved. We could have become the tyrants you claimed to fear. She paused. We didn't. We chose cooperation. We chose trust. We could have conquered half the galaxy by now. We chose not to. But you are conquering us now, Thexril said. No, Una replied. We are holding you accountable. That's different. You betrayed us. You tried to murder us during peace talks. And even now, even after everything you've done, we haven't destroyed your species. We haven't killed your civilians. We've been precise and measured in our response. That is who humanity is. That is what you failed to understand. The trial lasted 3 days. The evidence was overwhelming. Video recordings, sensor data, testimony from neutral parties. There was no doubt about what had happened or who was responsible. The judge delivered the verdict, guilty on all counts. Thexril and his co-conspirators were sentenced to life imprisonment on a secure facility. They would live, but they would spend the rest of their existence cut off from their people, a reminder of what happened when you betrayed trust. Captain Jinwoo Bei arrived at the first Vex colony 1 week after the trial ended. He commanded a fleet of 50 ships, but they weren't warships. They were cargo vessels, transports, and mobile factories. His job wasn't to conquer, His job was to help rebuild. The colony governor met him at the orbital station. She was young for a Vex, her shell still bright and unmarked. "Captain Bay," she said cautiously. "Your fleet is not what I expected." Jinwoo smiled. "We're not here to fight anymore. That part is over. Now we help you recover." "Why?" "We tried to kill your people." "Your military tried to kill our people," Jinwoo corrected. "You didn't. And our job is to make sure your military can never do it again while also making sure your civilians don't suffer. We can do both." Over the following months, human advisors worked with Vex governors to restructure their government. The military was reduced, but economic development was encouraged. Trade agreements were established. Educational exchanges were organized. It wasn't easy. There was tension and mistrust on both sides. But slowly, carefully, progress was made. Dr. Ji-won traveled to several Vex worlds, teaching xenobiology and cultural understanding. She remembered the fear in that conference room, the certainty that she was going to die. But she also remembered the Vex governor who had arrested Thexril, who had chosen peace over pride. "Hatred is easy," Ji-won told her students, both human and Vex. "Revenge is easy. Building something better is hard. But if we want to share this galaxy, we have to try." Back on Earth, Admiral Hyun watched reports from the Vex territories. The transition was working. Violence had ended. Cooperation was beginning. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. "Do you think they learned their lesson?" Specialist Tai Yang asked her one day. Hyun considered the question. Some of them did. Maybe not all, but enough. And the rest of the galaxy learned something too. What's that? That humanity keeps its promises. We promised to protect those who honored galactic law. We promised to respond if anyone betrayed us. We did both. Hyun smiled slightly. The Vex tested us. They found out we meant what we said. The price had been paid. Justice had been served. And the galaxy would remember. 5 years had passed since the betrayal at Chrono 7. The galaxy had changed in ways both subtle and profound. The Vex Imperium still existed, but it was different now. Smaller. Peaceful. Its people focused on trade and culture rather than military expansion. Human advisors still worked with Vex governments, but the relationship had evolved from occupation to partnership. President Yoonji Nam stood before the Galactic Council, looking out at representatives from hundreds of worlds. She was the leader of the United Earth government, elected 2 years after the Vex incident. She had inherited a galaxy that both respected and feared humanity, and her job was to show them which emotion was more appropriate. 5 years ago, Yoonji began, her voice clear and strong, we faced a test. One species chose to betray us, to break the most fundamental law of our galactic community. Many of you wondered how humanity would respond. Would we become conquerors? Would we take revenge on innocent civilians? Would we prove that your fears about us were justified? She paused, letting her words sink in. We did none of those things. We responded with precision and restraint. We dismantled a military threat while protecting civilians. We held the guilty accountable while offering the innocent a path forward. We showed you who humanity really is. A murmur ran through the council chamber. Representatives leaned toward each other, whispering in dozens of languages. Yoonji waited for silence before continuing. We don't want to rule you. We never did. We want to trust you, and we want you to trust us. That hasn't changed. What has changed is that now you know beyond any doubt what happens when that trust is broken. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of alien ambassadors. We are powerful, yes. We are dangerous, yes. But we are not your enemies unless you make us your enemies. The Kelthani arbiter, Quendor, rose from his seat. He was older now, moving more slowly, but his voice was still strong. President Nam speaks truth. The human response to the Vex betrayal was measured and just. They could have destroyed an entire species. They chose not to. This is the definition of strength tempered with wisdom. Other representatives spoke up, adding their support. The Vex delegate, a young governor named Krixal, stood last. My people made a terrible mistake, she said, her translator conveying the weight of her words. We believed the lies our military leaders told us. We thought humanity was a threat to be eliminated. We were wrong. In the 5 years since the trial, humans have helped us rebuild. They have taught us, traded with us, and treated us with more respect than we deserved. We are grateful, and we will never forget. After the council session ended, Yoonji walked through the gardens of the council station. It was a peaceful place. filled with plants from 1,000 different worlds. She found a quiet bench and sat, letting the tension of the speech drain away. A young human cadet approached her. Cadet Hana Yu was fresh from the academy, assigned to the council station for her first diplomatic rotation. She looked nervous but determined. "President Nam," Hana said, saluting. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to ask you something." "Of course, Cadet, sit down." Hana sat on the edge of the bench. "I've been studying the Vex incident. It's required reading at the academy now, and I keep wondering, what if it happens again? What if another species tries to betray us?" Yunji smiled. "Then we'll respond the same way. With precision, with restraint, with justice, not revenge. That's who we are, Cadet. That's who we choose to be. But won't they think we're weak if we don't completely destroy anyone who attacks us? Look around this station," Yunji said, gesturing at the garden. "Do you see fear or respect in how the other species treat us?" Hana thought about it. The alien diplomats always greeted human representatives warmly. They sought Earth's opinion on important matters. They asked for human help with disputes and problems. "Respect," she said slowly. "They respect us. Exactly. They respect us because we're strong enough to destroy our enemies but wise enough not to, when we don't have to. Real power isn't about how much damage you can do. It's about choosing not to do damage when you don't need to." Hana nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. "That's why galactic law exists. Not to protect them from us, but to protect everyone from unnecessary conflict." "You're going to do well in the diplomatic corps," Yunji said with a smile. Far away, in a secure prison facility on the edge of known space, former High Commander Thexeril sat in his cell. It was not cruel. He had food, water, entertainment, and regular exercise. But he was alone, cut off from his people, a prisoner of his own choices. The door opened. Dr. Jiwon Choi entered, carrying a datapad. She visited once every few months, conducting research on Vex psychology and rehabilitation. Thexeril had come to respect these visits. The doctor was always honest with him, never cruel but never sympathetic either. "Dr. Choi," Thexeril said through his translator, "you've returned." "I have questions about Vex social structures," Jiwon said, sitting down across from him. "For my research. But first I want to know something. Do you understand now why what you did was wrong?" Thexeril was quiet for a long time. "I thought I was protecting my species. I thought humans would eventually conquer us all. And now? Now I see that I created the very thing I feared. By attacking you, I forced you to show your military strength. I made the galaxy fear humanity, which was exactly what I claimed to want to prevent." Thexeril's shell seemed to dim. "I was a fool," Jiwon nodded. "Yes, you were. But at least you understand that now. The question is whether others learn from your mistake. What happens when I die?" Thexeril asked suddenly. "Will I be remembered as the villain who destroyed the Vex Imperium?" "Probably," Jiwon said honestly. "But you'll also be remembered as a lesson, a warning. You'll be the answer to the question, what happens when you betray humanity? Every young cadet in every species will study what you did and what happened because of it. Is that supposed to comfort me? No. It's supposed to give your life some meaning. You made a choice. It was the wrong choice. But because of what happened, others will think twice before making the same mistake." Jiwon stood to leave. "You thought you were eliminating a threat. Instead, you proved why galactic law was necessary. Humans don't seek conflict, but we will finish it. That's what you taught the galaxy." After Jiwon left, Thexeril sat alone with his thoughts. He would die here eventually, a cautionary tale, a reminder of the cost of betrayal. It was not the legacy he had wanted, but it was the legacy he had earned. Back on Kronos 7 station, now fully repaired and busier than ever, a new species was being welcomed into the Galactic Council. They were called the Tren, a peaceful species from the inner core worlds. Their ambassador was nervous, overwhelmed by the complexity of galactic politics. "I have studied your laws and customs," the Tren ambassador said during his introduction. "But there is one law I keep hearing about. Section 7, subsection 3, about humanity. Can you explain this to me?" Ambassador Una Park, now a senior council member with gray hair and laugh lines around her eyes, smiled warmly. "Of course. Please sit with me. Let me tell you a story." The Tren ambassador sat, his large eyes fixed on Una with complete attention. "Galactic law is clear," Una began. "Do not betray humans. This law exists because 60 years ago humanity saved the galaxy from the Krellian incursion. We fought for 3 years while others evacuated. We bled so they could live. In return, we asked for one simple thing: never betray us and we will never betray you. And someone broke this law? Yes. 5 years ago, the Vex military tried to assassinate human diplomats. They thought they could eliminate us quietly. They were wrong. Una pulled up historical footage on her datapad, showing the careful, measured human response. We dismantled their military, held their leaders accountable, and then helped them rebuild. We showed the galaxy that power without control is worthless. We showed them who we really are. The Tren ambassador watched the footage with growing understanding. You could have destroyed them completely. Yes, but we didn't, because we're not monsters. We're not conquerors. We're just a species that values trust above everything else. Break that trust and we will respond. Honor that trust and you will never have a better ally. I understand now, the Tren said slowly. The law isn't about fear. It's about mutual respect, exactly. Una smiled. Welcome to the Galactic Council, Ambassador. You're going to do just fine. As the station bustled with activity around them, as ships from hundreds of worlds docked and departed, as trade and diplomacy and friendship flourished in the darkness between stars, one truth remained constant. Humanity had proven what it valued most. Not conquest, not revenge, but trust, justice, and the simple belief that different species could work together if they chose to. The galaxy had learned its lesson, and the peace that followed was stronger than ever before.